Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to do something fun. We're going to do some levitation photography. I've got my model here who is also my partner Katie, and for those who don't know, Katie has her own YouTube channel as well. It's called Katie's Playtime, where she does a whole bunch of fun activities for kids. So if you have kids or you're younger, definitely check out her channel. I'll put a link in the description below if I remember. She hasn't done much for a while on there, but she's going to get back into it. So yeah, but she's got heaps of awesome videos for kids, so definitely check that out. Her channel's actually bigger than mine anyway, but yeah, so we're going to do some levitation photography. All you need, there's a couple of different ways of doing this, but I think this is probably the best way in terms of what you get at the end. So what you need to do this levitation photography is a camera, a tripod, a stool or a chair of some sort, and a model. Alright, let's go. Alright, so we've found a location. It's not the best, but it's going to do. We've got Katie there on the stool. She's just down the road there. What you want to do is put your camera in manual focus mode and manual exposure mode, and you're going to focus on the subject, which is obviously Katie and the stool. We're going to take a photo, then we're going to move Katie away and move the stool away and take a photo of just the environment without them there. And then later on we're going to Photoshop them together to get the levitation effect to work. So I'll show you that in Photoshop, but first let's take these photos. Alright, so now that we've taken a couple of photos of Katie on the stool in a couple of different positions, and now what we're going to do is get Katie to walk away and take the stool with her and take a couple of photos, or just one photo, of what you'd call a clean plate. This is what we're going to use to get rid of the stool in Photoshop after. So make sure during that whole time that you had the camera on a tripod, you locked in your settings manually and you had manual focus, because if anything shifts, it's going to be hard to Photoshop it in later, and you don't want your focus to change, because once the person or model does move away with the stool, the camera is going to want to focus on something else if you are using autofocus. So lock the camera in completely manual, take the photos of the person on the stool, get them to go away, and then take a photo again with nothing there. And I think that's it. I think we're ready for Photoshop, so I'll see you in yeah, I'll see you in Photoshop. How was it?
Oh, you know, it's pretty hard. No, no, it was fun. It's good fun. Just do yoga breathing while you're trying to lay flat on the chair is my only advice.
So that was actually pretty fun and easy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was pretty easy.
Photoshop's probably the hardest part, but it's not really, because we've taken that clean plate.
That's what he says. He didn't have to lie on the chair.
But no, seriously. The photoshopping will be, it's not hard, it's just, yeah, it'll be alright, because we've taken that clean plate. If you don't take a photo, if you don't use a tripod and you don't take the clean plate, you still can do this. It just means you're going to have to clone things out in Photoshop, and it's going to take a lot longer than having this clean plate. So this is the fastest and best way, in my opinion, to do this. Otherwise you'll spend hours in, maybe not hours, but you'll spend ages in Photoshop trying to clone out where the stool was, and if you've got a really difficult background, it's going to be really hard to do. But yeah, let's go. Let's get this Photoshopped. Alright, so that was actually a really fun shoot. We're back in the little studio now, and I'm going to start Photoshopping this photo. Yeah, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop. If my screen blanks out or anything weird happens, don't stress. It's just because I'm using some screen recording software and it does tend to play around a little bit. So what I've done is loaded both my images into Photoshop, as you can see. Now, somewhere here there was a little bit of movement, so I must have, when I hit the shutter on the camera, I must have pushed it down on the tripod, which I should have had like a shutter timer set. But anyway, what we can do, select the first layer here. So as I said, I've loaded both of those images in. We've got the one where we took the photo of Katie levitating, and we've got the clean plate. And we've also got the other one which is laying across the chair, but I'm gonna do that separately, like not in the video. I'm gonna use this one as the example. But what you wanna do is select this first layer, hold down Control or Command, and click on the second layer. And we're gonna go to Edit, and where are we? Auto Align Layers. And just leave that on auto and press OK. Now what that's gonna do is align the layers and hopefully get rid of any movement we made. So if we turn this off and on now, it's pretty close. And you can see there's a little bit around the edge there where there's some image missing, and that's because it moved that image to make sure that they were on top of each other. I don't know why this one's got a haze in the background. It was shot on manual, so something may have been going on in the background. I think they were digging, had some construction going on, so maybe it's just dust passing through, which is a little bit annoying, but nonetheless. So there's a couple ways you can do this. One of them is you select the first layer, and now this layer is the one obviously with Katie on it. The one underneath is the layer with nothing. So we're trying to remove the stool. So you can just use the eraser, and you can just, let's make that bigger. And you can just start erasing the stool. But what I prefer to do is a thing called layer masks, and it just allows you to make changes a little bit easier. So with this layer selected, press this button here, add layer mask. Now make sure the layer mask is selected by clicking on it. And the way this works is if you get the paintbrush right here, if your foreground color is set to black, it's going to remove parts of the layer with Katie on it. So let's just make the brush bigger. So we can go up here and make the brush bigger, and we'll make it a soft brush, relatively soft. We'll go about that size, maybe a bit bigger. Yeah, that looks good. So what happens now, because we've got black selected, we're going to be painting black on this layer mask here. So as we paint, you can see it's removing. But what we can do, if we swap these, so white will be the foreground color, you can bring it back. And you can toggle these colors by pressing X, just like that. Now black's the foreground color, so we can paint away, and press X again, we can paint it back in. Now it's easier than using the eraser because it's non-destructive, meaning we can come back at any time and we can fix up if we've painted over something by accident or anything like that. So what we're going to do now is just make sure black is our foreground color, layer mask is selected, we've got the brush tool, and we're going to start painting out the stool. And look how easy that is, because we had that clean plate, easy. Otherwise what we would have had to do is clone out, and this would have been pretty easy to clone because the background's quite simple. But if you did it on like bricks or pavers or something like that, it might have been a lot harder to clone out. Don't forget to clone out the shadow. I'm gonna have to add an artificial shadow in probably later to make it a little bit more realistic. And this line here, it was from a pole or something. I'm gonna remove that as well later, manually. But what we're gonna do, it's gonna be hard to get the brush all up in here without painting over the shoes. So I'll put that back in. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab the pen tool, actually, polygonal lasso tool, maybe. And I'm gonna draw, you can do this with a brush if you're good at it, but I'd prefer to probably do this. We're just gonna draw with a polygonal lasso tool, just around this area. Well, it's probably not gonna look any good actually. I'll see how this works. I'll speed this up. All right, now that we've gotten to this point with the polygonal lasso tool, we can just draw a box kind of thing here. And that's just gonna make sure that our brush, when we go back to brush and we make sure the foreground color is black, we can paint here without going over that bit. You don't have to do that, you can just brush, but it's hard to do by hand. So what's that look like? That's actually pretty decent. I'm gonna leave it like that for the sake of the tutorial. And now what I'm gonna do is get rid of this shadow here down here, and we're gonna add a fake shadow. So press Control or Command Shift Alt E. And what that does is flatten everything we've done to a layer on its own. So if we turn these off, you can see it's now a layer on its own. And what we can do is we'll try the spot healing brush tool, and we'll just paint over this black shadow here from, it was like a pole or something like that. And we'll just paint over that. Photoshop should do a pretty good job removing this for us because it's only a small line. Come on, there we go. That looks pretty decent. I might fix it up later a bit better. Now what I'm going to do is add a fake shadow. So the way I'm going to do that, I could just get the dodge and burn tool, which is this one here, and we could just paint our own little shadow on the ground, but I don't think that's going to look as good. You can do that, but this may take a little bit longer, but it might look a bit better. I'm going to grab the quick selection tool, and we're just going to select Katie by holding the mouse down and just drawing around her. This doesn't have to be perfect because it's only going to be a shadow, so that will probably do. Just like that. Make it smaller, get in there. Select her there, shoes. This might, if you've got a really busy background, this may not work as well, but you can just draw the shadow in, but this is probably a better option. If it's any areas you selected you didn't want to, hold down Alt and just go like that, the same way, paint that out. Just like that. All right, then what we're gonna do, that's pretty good. I might just fix this shoulder here, that'll do. We're gonna right click on that and click layer via copy. And now that'll be Katie on her own just like that. Now it's not perfect obviously, but we're gonna blur this and it is just a shadow, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, as I said before, you can burn if you wanted to, or paint black. Let's just say you've got a brush with a bit of black. You could just paint a shadow in and then lower the opacity if you wanted to, but I think this is gonna look a lot more realistic. So we've got this one selected. What we're gonna do is press Control T, and that means we can move it on its own, sorry. And I'm gonna hold down Shift and drag from the top and make it a bit flatter. So, because that's how a shadow would look on the ground, it'd be pretty flat. I know that looks a bit weird. Then we're gonna double click on the layer. Right there, there's plenty of ways to do this. Color overlay and make sure that's set to black and 100%. Now I might squash this a little bit more. So again, Control T, Shift and pull down. Depending on your version of Photoshop, you might not have to hold Shift, but on the newer version, you seem to have to hold Shift to do that. Now I'll move the shadow to somewhere a little bit more realistic. Now the thing is, you can tell the sun's coming from this way, and in your image, you might actually be able to use the original shadow that was there. The problem was the sun was coming from up in this corner. So as you saw before, which I should be able to show you, let's go back to here. Oops, turn that off. There we go. You can see the shadow of the stool goes that way, and you can't even see Katie's shadow at all because the sun is so far over this way. So your shadow might be actually in a good position. You might be able to keep it, but in this instance, I wasn't able to do that. So we're gonna put these back on. We're gonna use this fake shadow. So when the shadow is selected, we're gonna go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And we're just gonna apply a bit of a blur to it to make it look realistic. And I'm also gonna pull the opacity down because it's too dark, it looks fake. So we're gonna pull that down. Maybe something like that. And I might not have it directly under it because as you can tell, the sun is coming from the corner. So I might have it somewhere like that. I don't know, that's gonna take a bit of playing around with, but that is basically it. So personally, I'd play around with that shadow a little bit more, try and get it perfect. And yeah, then what I'll do with that image is save it and play around with the colors, get it to look really nice, and then it's ready for Instagram. So hope you enjoyed. If you want to see the finished photo, I'm going to put it in this video anyway, but if you do want to see the finished photo on my Instagram, make sure to follow me. I'll have my handle up on the screen here somewhere. And make sure to follow Katie on YouTube as well, and I'll tag Katie on Instagram so you can follow her account as well. So hope you enjoyed. It is a pretty easy method. As long as you shoot that blank plate, it's a lot easier. If you don't do that, then you have to be cloning out things, and if your background's very, very distracting, it's going to be really hard to clone out perfectly. So this is the best option. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions at all about this method, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and answer them as best as possible. But that's about all. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks very much for watching.